Interview, take 3, mark.
Speed.
Slate.
Okay, this is the first time I've ever talked about my tattoos because I was embarrassed of those chapters of my life, and now I'm not. So this is a breaking out moment for me. 1995, I was about 6. We were headed to the airport. I've never been to an airport before. They told me I was going to Disneyland. Didn't tell me we were moving our entire lives to America. It was a huge moment for us. My dad fought in the Vietnam War. He was a high-ranked general. My dad endured so much more than we knew. I didn't find out everything he went through until he passed away and we found his journal. He fought in the war. He was shot multiple times. He was put in a concentration camp. He got away from the concentration camp and lived in the mountains by himself. Throughout all of this, he was coming home visiting my mom and getting her pregnant every time. I never remember Dad ever talking about his shortcomings or his challenges. Dad just kept pushing. He always talked about starting a landscaping business and buying a big house. He was always dreaming. That was my dad, and that made me who I am today. I've gotten all my tattoos except for one of them before I was 19. It was an outlet for me. It was a lot of pain, a lot of anguish, a lot of confusion. I put in my tattoos. My first tattoo is actually on my hip. Should I show you? It's actually this tattoo. If it looks poorly done, it was. A friend of mine had a brother say, "Hey, I know how to make a tattoo." 13 years old, 3 of us got tattoos in her house with a melted spoon. As an adult now, I think back like, what? I ran away from home at about 14. At 16, I met a guy, a boy, and I fell in love with him. That was the beginning of a very emotionally, mentally, and physically abusive relationship for the next 6 years. And within those 6 years, I had no friends. I was isolated. I had nobody but him and his emotions. As you can see my confusion. This was actually his name that I got covered up. And this is a queen bee. I guess I never felt like a queen at that age, but I figured if I tatted it on me, I would start feeling more like one. I feel like if I talked about these tattoos that I would be misunderstood, but it's quite on the contrary of this is exactly who I am. You wouldn't understand me until I told you about these tattoos. Then you'll truly understand who I am. I was always trying to please him, you know, as a lot of victims do of domestic abuse. It was incredible how little he hid it. There's times where he's hit me outside the store and nobody would see me. It was like I was a hologram. It was definitely lonely because I felt like nobody was gonna fight for me. It's like they saw me there, but they couldn't get to me, or nor do they want to. So I figured if I tatted things on my body, you would see me more. And they didn't. Telling you all this, I see more value and appreciation for them actually. Every time I felt like something was taking over me, I put it on my skin. And that was my coping mechanism, and that was my empowerment of like, here it is on my skin, there's nothing else to hide. I never really left the abusive relationship. And this is the most important part of my story, I feel like, because there's so much victim shaming that somebody as strong as me doing what I do for a living needs to tell the story of, I never found the strength to leave. We were getting chased by the police and our car flipped 6 times on the freeway. He got arrested. They took me in the back and interviewed me. And when I told them the stories and I showed them my scars, the detective said it was probably the worst case of domestic abuse he'd seen in his whole career. He was put in prison for the longest they could have put him in for. And there I was, just like in the street by myself with nothing, but I was free. It's not easy to leave. There is nothing in this world that will show you what you're made of like fighting. When you watch my fights, I'm very popular for very exciting fights, and that's because I got a lot to say, and I'm saying it in my fights and in my aggression and in my resilience. You can see it and you can feel it. That's where I let it out. I am so glad that I returned to Vietnam about 2 years ago. It was after my dad had passed. I discovered his diary and I was just yearning for the stories that I'd miss. And what kept me away was really not knowing if I was going to be accepted. So I told one championship that we have to do a show in Vietnam, and I wasn't gonna let up. So after we put on a great show, we started working with the government to legalize MMA, and I'm really, really proud of that. I'm really proud of bringing my sport to Vietnam. Last tattoo I want to show you is this one. It says Muay Thai in Thai. If you look up Muay Thai, this is a traditional image you'll see. This is the first and only tattoo that I wasn't expressing pain, I was expressing pride. So if you were to say my tattoos were a story, this is the triumphant one. It shows young girls that you can be powerful.